This is Mrs. Wainwright's Math Class, Chapters 6, 7, and 8, Packet C, Lesson 1. Turn an improper fraction into a mixed number in simplest form. This lesson involves chicken fights. Our learning targets for the lesson: I can confidently identify an improper fraction, and I can turn an improper fraction into a fully simplified mixed number. So this lesson compares fractions to chicken fights in the pool. Have you ever had chicken fights in the pool in the summertime? If you haven't, it's a lot of fun. You do need to make sure you know how to swim. You do need to make sure you stay far away from the edges of the pool. And you do need to make sure you have permission from a parent with an adult at the pool and watching you to have chicken fights. But if you haven't had a chicken fight in a pool, let's watch a short video clip to see what a chicken fight looks like. So you can see in chicken fights, one person sits on another person's shoulders, and you have teams like that, and the goal is to try and knock the person off the other person's shoulders. Let's take a look at some vocabulary that goes along with this. The first vocabulary phrase is improper fraction. An improper fraction is a fraction in which the numerator is larger than the denominator. So in an improper fraction, the number on top is larger than the number on the bottom. It's what you might call a top-heavy fraction because the top is larger or heavier than the bottom. An improper fraction is like a team that would topple over in a chicken fight. Think about it, in a chicken fight, if you have one person sitting on someone else's shoulders, you want the bigger person on the bottom to make it a more stable partnership. You wouldn't want a little person on the bottom and a big person on top, because what would happen? That top person would topple over. The little person wouldn't be able to hold them so well. Let's take a look at a video that shows this in action. Now this guy in the back should get on top, but he's going to get on the bottom. This is not going to be a stable chicken fight. This is not a good partnership. What's going to happen with the big guy on top?
Alex, there's no way.
Yeah, I've never done this before.
Let's do chicken fight. Somebody hurry.
Don't drop me backwards. You're gonna die.
Just like a top-heavy partnership in a chicken fight where the top person topples over into the pool, the same thing happens with a top-heavy improper fraction. The top fraction will topple down. We'll see that in a few minutes. 3/2 would be an example of an improper fraction because the numerator is larger than the denominator. Our next vocabulary word or phrase is mixed number. A mixed number is a number that has both a whole number and a fraction. And our final vocabulary phrase is simplest form. And simplest form we know from Packet B. It's a fraction that's fully reduced, simplified, or in lowest terms. So if you forget about simplest form, you can always look back at the videos from Packet B. So if I had the fraction 2/4 and I wanted to put it in simplest form, so 2/4 is a fraction that is not in simplest form. But 1/2 is the fraction that is in simplest form. It's the smallest numbers possible, equaling the same amount. Let's go back to the orange, the mixed number. An example of a mixed number, a whole number and a fraction, would be 5 and 1/2. The whole number is 5, the fraction is 1/2. Whole number and fraction together, called a mixed number. And go back up to improper fraction. Remember we said an example would be something like 9/5, because 9, my numerator, is larger than my denominator. It's top heavy and would not work well in a chicken fight. Example number 1 says fully simplify 10/4. So I'm going to take my fraction and rewrite it as is. When I have to fully simplify a number or reduce it or put it into lowest terms, sometimes it may be a proper fraction to begin with, which means it's a fraction that would work fine in a chicken fight. Numerator is smaller than the denominator. But sometimes it might be an improper fraction to begin with, meaning that the numerator is larger than the denominator and it wouldn't work well in a chicken fight. So that's the first thing I have to look for every time I'm asked to simplify or reduce or put it into lowest terms. I look at 10/4. Is this a proper fraction or an improper fraction? Another way to think about it, is it a proper chicken fight team or an improper chicken fight team? Well, 10/4 is most definitely an improper chicken fight team, so it's an improper fraction. What's going to happen in that chicken fight team? Boom. That guy is going to fall off, and he's going to fall right down next to him, which we say is falling into the division box. Cross him out on top because he's not there anymore. He fell into the pool. He kind of fell into our division box pool. So we make it look like a division box. Now we have this problem, which is 10 divided by 4. That's why we put it in the division box. So I have to solve this problem. I know my steps for long division are does, Mrs. Wainwright, savor, chocolate bars regularly, certainly, underline the B, arrow from the B to the D. I started with a fraction. And when I have a fraction, if there's a remainder, the remainder needs to be turned into a fraction. So next to my R, I'm going to put a fraction bar to remind me when I get there, if there is a remainder, it has to be turned into a fraction. So okay, we're ready to divide. 4 does not go into 1, but it does go into 10, so I put a chocolate bar over my 0. 4 goes into 10 how many times? 2. I multiply. 2 times 4 is 8. I subtract. 10 minus 8 equals 2. Compare 2 is less than 4. Is there anything to bring down? No, there's not. There is a remainder, and my fraction bar next to the R reminds me that I have to put my remainder into a fraction. How do I do that? There's one and only one correct way. My remainder itself becomes the numerator of the fraction. My divisor, the number outside the box, becomes the denominator of the fraction. Notice that my fraction is the same size as my whole number. That's important to make it obvious that you have a mixed number here. The whole number is 2. The fraction is 2/4. So my mixed number answer is 2 2/4. Let's write it down. But now I cannot say that that's my final answer because I know that that's not fully simplified. When I look at that fraction, I see that both 2 and 4 are even numbers. And I know from packet B that it is not fully simplified if my numerator and denominator are even numbers. So what do I need to do? I need to follow the steps to simplify the fraction. So my whole number will stay the same, but I do need to simplify my fraction. So I'll write down 2 and 4, and I'll find the factors. The factors of 2 are 1 and 2. Does 2 work? Oh, it's already there, so I'm done. The factors of 4 are 1 and 4. Does 2 work? Yes, it does. 2 times 2. I never write a number twice, so I'm done. Do I see a 2 down there? Yes, I do. So this will go in my window box. 2 over 2. Again, I'm simplifying, so I'm going to make my numbers smaller, which means I need to divide. Don't forget your equal sign. Now, very important, your final answer has to include that whole number in it so that you don't forget. Immediately move the whole number over. Now you can divide for your fraction to reduce that. So I say 2 divided by 2 equals 1. That becomes my new numerator. Put my fraction bar. 4 divided by 2 equals 2. That becomes my denominator. So my final fully simplified answer is 2 1/2. In order for a number to be fully simplified or fully reduced or in lowest terms, number 1, it cannot be an improper fraction, and number 2, it needs to be fully reduced or fully simplified. Notice in this answer 2 1/2, in that fraction I see a 1, and when there's a 1, I know that I'm done. So 10/4 fully simplifies to 2 1/2. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 1 right now. Let's take a look at example number 2. Mrs. Wainwright gave Jenna 22/6 of Hershey bars. Show the amount of chocolate Jenna received in simplest form. Okay, so what do I need to do? I need to show the amount of chocolate Jenna got in simplest form. So let's write down how much chocolate she got, which is 22/6 of Hershey bars, and simplest form. First thing I need to do now is look and see, is that a proper fraction or an improper fraction? Will it work in a chicken fight? 22/6. No way, that's not going to work in a chicken fight. What's going to happen? Boom. It drops down into the division box pool. That partnership fails. So now we have the division problem, 22 divided by 6. We go ahead and divide. Does Mrs. Wainwright savor chocolate bars regularly? Certainly. Underline the B, arrow from the B to the D. This was started as a fraction, so if there's a remainder, it needs to be in a fraction. I put the fraction bar next to my R. First 2 does not get a chocolate bar, the second 2 does, so we say 6 goes into 22 3 times. 3 times 6 equals 18. 22 minus 18 equals 4. Is 4 less than 6? Yes, it is. Is there anything to bring down? There is nothing to bring down. And I do have a remainder, which I remember I have to write as a fraction. So in order to write my remainder as a fraction, my remainder becomes the numerator. My divisor outside the box becomes my denominator. So I have the number 3 and 4/6. Is that fully simplified? Well, look at my fraction. 4 is an even number and 6 is an even number, so that cannot be fully simplified. Therefore, I'm going to need to simplify this number. So I take my 4 and my 6 and find the factors. Factors of 4 are 1 and 4. 2 does work. It's 2 times 2, which means that I'm done. Factors of 6 are 1 and 6. 2 does work. 2 times 3 equals 6. I try 3 and I see that it's there already, so I'm done. Is 4 a common factor? Nope. Is 2 a common factor? Yes, it is. So 2 is my GCF. That's what I put inside both sections of my window box. I'm going to divide to simplify or reduce. Put my equal sign, and remember, very important, to bring my whole number over. It has to be part of the answer. Now we go ahead and divide, and I say 4 divided by 2 equals 2. 6 divided by 2 equals 3. So I have 3 and 2/3. How do I know that this answer is actually done? Well, look at my fraction. They're not both even, and that's good. And look, they're in counting order, 2, 3. When they're in counting order, they're only one away from each other, so they're done. This was a word problem. It said, show the amount of chocolate Jenna received in simplest form. I know my answer is 3 and 2/3 in simplest form. So my final answer is Jenna received 3 and 2/3 Hershey bars. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 2 right now. Example number 3 says fully simplify 75/200. So I'll write down the given fraction 75/200. First thing I need to do is see if that's proper or improper. Will that work in a chicken fight? Yes, it will. That's a proper fraction. So all I need to do then is reduce. Okay, I know to do that I'm going to find the GCF, the greatest common factor of both 75 and 200. So 75, that's going to be 1 and 75. 2 doesn't work because 5 is not an even number. Well, 7 plus 5 equals 12. 3 does go into 12. So 3 has to work. What's 3's partner? I have no idea. So let me do a quick division problem. And I find out that 3's partner is 25. Does 4 work? Well, it doesn't work. 4 does not go into 75. Does 5 work? It ends in a 5. It has to. I don't know what that answer is, so again I'm going to do a quick little division problem. And I find out that 5 times 15 equals 75. Does 6 work? It's not divisible by 2 and 3, so no, it doesn't. Does 7 work? No, because 70 and then 77. Does 8 work? No, 8 doesn't go into 75, it's 72. Does 9 work? No. 10 doesn't end in a 0. 11, that would be 77. 12, no. 13, 14, 15, I already have it, so I am done. Okay, let's find the factors of 200. Well, we know that 1 and its partner is 200. Does 2 work? It has to. It ends in an even number. 2's partner, well, 2 times 100 is 200. Does 3 work? I add the digits together and I get 2. No, 3's not going to work. Does 4 work? Well, does 4 go into 200? I think so, because 4 goes into 20. So let's do a little bit of a division problem over here. We find that 4 does divide in evenly, and its partner is 50. Does 5 work? It has to. It ends in a 0. What's 5's partner? Don't really know. So again, I can do a division problem, figure it out, and I find that 5's partner is 40. Does 6 work? It's not divisible by 2 and 3, so no. Does 7 work? Not really sure, so do a division problem by 7. Takes the time, but that's the best way to know if it truly works. I have a remainder here, so 7 doesn't work. Does 8 work? Not sure, so let's do a division problem by 8. Work it out, and there is no remainder, so 8 does work. 8's partner is 25. Does 9 work? 2 is not divisible by 9, so it doesn't. Does 10 work? Has to. It ends in a 0. What's 10's partner? Well, 10 times 20 equals 200. Does 11 work? No. 12? No. 13? 14? 15? 16? 17? 18? 19? Oh, I get to 20, and those are all of my factors of 200. So I go back up to my largest or my greatest factor of 75, which is 75. Do I see it as a factor of 200? Nope. My next factor is 25. Do I see it as a factor of 200? Yes, I do. So I'll divide by that GCF in both the top and bottom of my window box. And 75 divided by 25 equals 3. 200 divided by 25 equals 8. How do I know that 3/8 is fully reduced? Well, they're not both even, so it may be. I don't see a 1, so I'm not sure. They're not in counting order, so I'm not sure. So let's see what the GCF is. The GCF of 3 and 8. 3 is 1 and 3, and that's it. 8 is 1 and 8, and 2 and 4, and that's it. There is no 3 in the 8s, but there is a 1. The GCF is 1. When the GCF is 1, my fraction is done. So 75 200ths, fully simplified, equals 3/8. So a reminder, when the directions say to fully simplify, reduce, or put the fraction into lowest terms, first you need to see if it's proper or improper. If it's improper, it's going to drop down into that division box. Then I should reduce or simplify. If it's proper, I simply need to reduce or simplify. Some problems will be harder than others, but as you can see, if you take your time, you can work through it and get to the right answer. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 3 right now. Let's take a look at example number 4, and I do apologize. I know there are various problems in this, so it tends to be a long video, but I also know there are various things that you're going to encounter as you solve this type of problem, and I do want to make sure you've seen each of them in this video. So we have 2 more problems to do before we finish. Okay, fully simplify 17/5. So the first thing we do is write it down. Next thing we do is that proper or improper, will it work in a chicken fight? No, it won't. What's going to happen to the big heavy guy on top? Boom, he's going to drop down into the division box pool. We know now we need to divide. We do our steps for long division. Remember, this is a fraction, so the remainder should be in a fraction. I put the fraction bar next to my remainder. I go ahead, 5 goes into 17 3 times. 3 times 5 is 15. Subtract 17 minus 15 is 2. 2 is less than 5, so I compared. There's nothing to bring down. My remainder will turn into a fraction, so remainder becomes the numerator. Divisor outside the box becomes the denominator. Rewrite my number 3 2/5. Okay, do I need to reduce 2/5? Well, they're not both even. There's no 1. They're not in counting order, so I have to find the GCF of both 2 and 5. Factors of 2 are 1 and 2. Once I get to 2, it's already there. I'm done. The factors of 5 are 1 and 5. 2 doesn't work because it's not even. 3 doesn't work. 4 doesn't work. 5 is already there, so I'm done. Do I see a 2? No, I don't. Do I see a 1? Yes, I do. Oh, and remember this? When the GCF is 1, I am done. So 3 2/5 is already fully simplified. Therefore, final answer is 3 2/5. So sometimes you will be given fractions that are improper fractions that you need to turn into mixed numbers, and sometimes you do need to simplify the fraction after that, but sometimes it's already done for you. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 4 right now. And our final important example is example number 5. The question says, what is the fully simplified form of 48/8? We know that we rewrite the fraction. We look and see if it's proper or improper. So the question I like to say is, will it work in a chicken fight? No way. This big heavy number on the top, boom, is going to fall down into the division box, and we're going to go ahead and divide. So I do my steps for long division, remembering that this is a fraction, so my remainder would need to be in a fraction. And I'm ready to divide. 8 doesn't go into 4, but it does go into 48. So we say that 6 times 8 is 48. I subtract 48 minus 48 is 0. I compare 0 is less than 8. There is nothing to bring down. Guess what? There is no remainder. 0 means that there's no remainder. So my final answer is simply 6. As you see in problem number 5, if there's no remainder, that means your final answer is a whole number. So 48/8 is fully simplified to 6. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 5 right now. So let's review. An improper fraction is a fraction where the numerator is larger than the denominator. It's top heavy, and it's a team that would not work in the chicken fight like that big heavy guy in the chicken fight video. A mixed number is a number that has both a whole number and a fraction. And simplest form means that the fraction is fully reduced, simplified, or in lowest terms, as we learned in Packet B. When you're given a fraction to fully simplify, reduce, or put into lowest terms, first you need to see if it's proper or improper and ask yourself the question, would it work in a chicken fight? If it would, you can simply reduce, but if it would not, you have to think, this isn't going to work in the chicken fight. Boom, it drops down into the division box. We go ahead and divide. When we're done, then we need to simplify that fraction. Please remember when you're doing this type of problem, that if you need to simplify the fraction at the end, remember to put your whole number in before you do the fraction division, because that whole number needs to be there. If you said the answer was 1/2, that would be wrong. The only correct answer here is 2 1/2. Sometimes you may be asked to simplify or reduce, and it is a proper fraction to begin with, as in this case 75/200ths. So if that's the case, we simply simplify or reduce as learned in Packet B. Sometimes we'll be asked to simplify or reduce. It's an improper fraction. It drops into the division box. But then once we're done, the GCF is 1, which means we do not need to reduce the fraction any further. It would simply be the mixed number that we got when we divided, as in this example right here. And yet other times we'll be asked to simplify or reduce. It's top heavy. We drop it into the division box, and the remainder is 0. So the answer could wind up being just a plain whole number and not a mixed number. By now, or by the time we finish practicing in class, you should confidently be able to say, I can identify an improper fraction, and I can turn an improper fraction into a fully simplified mixed number. As always, if you have questions or concerns during in-class practice, please be sure to see one of the teachers. We will help you with the lesson. Good luck with this lesson.